No.
We'll do it live! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Hi, and welcome to Hardcore Current Affairs. This episode is about territorial claims in the Arctic and potential for conflict. It's divided into 4 sections. First, an introduction to the Arctic, then the law, territorial claims, and potential conflict. There are timestamps in the description of this video and a list of sources. The Arctic is heavily disputed. Canada, Denmark, Norway, Russia, and the United States, known as the Arctic Five, all regard parts of the Arctic seas as national waters. The resource-rich region that is estimated to hold 30% of the world's untapped natural gas and 15% of its oil. The assumption that a significant proportion of the world's undiscovered oil and gas deposits lie beneath the Arctic seabed have turned the Arctic into a region of considerable geopolitical interest. As we shall see, the status of certain portions of the Arctic Sea region is in dispute for several reasons. The Arctic is commonly viewed as the region surrounding the North Pole, 90 degrees north. That includes the Arctic Ocean, its marginal seas, and the coastal areas of Alaska, Canada, Denmark and Greenland, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Russia. The Arctic is an enclosed ocean with 3 gates: the Bering Strait, the Davis Strait, and the Greenland, Iceland, and United Kingdom Gap. The Northwest Passage is a sea route connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans along the northern coast of North America. Sovereignty is claimed by Canada as internal waters. A state is contested by the United States. The interest in the Arctic relates to several geopolitical features of the Arctic. Its geographical location in between 3 continents, America, Europe, and Asia, offering short trade destinations, and as well as transit. Its abundance of strategically important industrial resources and mineral deposits, in particular oil and gas, its sea lanes inside and outside of the region, and its natural and man-induced operational conditions. The harsh climate of the Arctic, as well as overlapping territorial claims between the coastal states, present major challenges for governments in collaboration in the region. One of the main ongoing maritime delimitation disputes is the claim of the underwater Lomonosov Ridge involving Russia, Denmark, and Canada. Until 1999, the geographic North Pole and the major part of the Arctic Ocean's waters and the sea bottom had been considered to comprise the common heritage of mankind. Governments now have to file the claim for territory within 10 years of ratifying the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas to an extended continental shelf, along with scientific evidence that the area beyond 200 miles is in geological terms a prolongation of the landmass, which is validated gives it exclusive rights to resources on or below the seabed of that extended shelf area. Norway, Russia, Canada, and Denmark launched projects to provide a basis for seabed claims on extended continental shelves beyond their exclusive economic zones. The United States has not ratified the Law of the Sea Convention and is therefore not entitled to file an official claim to an extended continental shelf. The Arctic is also subject of strategic interest for external powers such as states with observer status to the Arctic Council, including Germany, Netherlands, Poland, United Kingdom, France, Spain, China, India, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Switzerland, and a plurality of non-governmental organizations and financial organizations. No country will ever own the North Pole, which is located about 400 nautical miles north of Greenland and the northernmost islands of Canada and Russia. Although the water and seabed close to shore belong to the coastal states, the surface water column and at least some of the seabed of the central Arctic Ocean belong to all humanity. The legal status of the Arctic territories is further governed by the norms of international law, the national legislation of the Arctic coastal states, and bilateral negotiations. The Arctic 5 countries have been granted the management, jurisdiction, and governance over Arctic Ocean under the Law of the Sea Convention. The convention defines the various forms of sovereignty, including territorial waters, the contiguous zone, the exclusive economic zone, and the continental shelf. Interstate relations in the region are primarily regulated by the Arctic Council and the Convention. This international agreement establishes exclusive economic zones that grants natural resources, development rights over all territorial waters out to 200 nautical miles, which is equivalent to 230 miles or 370 kilometers. And the continental shelf as a natural prolongation or seabed that extends beyond the 200 nautical miles, but not further than 350 nautical miles, which equals 400 miles or 650 kilometers. This provision allows the coastal states to have exclusive rights to and the harvesting of mineral resources to the end of the natural prolongation, but not exclusive rights over living resources beyond the exclusive economic zone. The Law of the Sea Convention does not establish ownership over the North Pole or the Arctic Ocean region, just jurisdiction authority over coastal states above and mineral resources under the continental shelf. The coastal countries' territorial sovereignty claims over the Arctic and the seafloor have not been resolved. Under the convention, there are several disputes which include the sector principle, continental shelf claims, Northwest Passage, Hans Island, and the Beaufort Sea dispute. The United States invokes customary international law as a basis of regional regulations and underscores the freedom of the high seas and accepts no special treaty for the region, whereas the European Union bases its policy on the Law of the Sea Convention and is more inclined to accept deviations and additions of legal instruments to meet the specificities of the Arctic region. Russia accepts to bow to the Ocean Convention, to which she is a party, but underscores that domestic legislation is yet another instrument of regional regulation. The European Union's Arctic strategy emphasizes its massive economic interest in the region, in particular in fish and rare minerals. In 2011, the Nordic countries signed, for the second time, a solidarity declaration intended to support Iceland, emphasizing regional forms of cooperation, as well as EU interests. All are in favor of treating indigenous people and cultures with due respect and to have them reap some of the economic benefit of the new area. Here, unfortunately, Asian countries have not yet expressed any policy. In 1925, based upon the sector principle, Canada became the first country to extend its maritime boundaries to the North Pole. On April the 15th in 1926, the Supreme Soviet of the USSR declared the territory between two lines from the west of Murmansk to the North Pole and from the eastern Chukchi Peninsula to the North Pole to be Soviet territory. Norway made similar sector claims, as did the United States. Denmark's sovereignty over all of Greenland was recognized by the United States in 1916 and by International Court in 1933. More recently, on the 15th December of 2014, Denmark, together with Greenland, claimed around 350,000 square miles of the continental shelf in the Arctic Ocean, extending from Greenland past the North Pole to the limits of the Russian exclusive economic zone. Greenland has the nearest coastline to the North Pole, and Denmark argues that the Lomonosov Ridge is an extension of Greenland. The Danish claim extends across the North Pole and into Russia's sector. Russia ratified the Law of the Sea Convention in 1997 and had, through 2007, to file a claim to an extended continental shelf. In 2015 and 16, Russia submitted additional data in support of its claim to a vast area of the Arctic Ocean, including the North Pole. The claim expands Russia's total territory on land and sea by about 460,000 square miles. After more than a decade of research, Canada filed a submission at the United Nations on May the 23rd in 2019 for a claim which is over 1.2 million square kilometers of seabed and subsoil, including the North Pole. If the submission is approved, Canada followingly will have exclusive rights to resources underneath this water. On November 27th, 2006, Norway made an official submission to extend the Norwegian seabed claim beyond the 200 nautical miles, 370 kilometers or 230 miles exclusive economic zone. The submission also states that an additional submission for continental shelf limits in other areas may be posted later. A new great geostrategic game is in progress in the Arctic Ocean, whose stakes are known, but not the final result. Rivalry is escalated and states of the region are defending their national interest. The arrival of the Arctic in mainstream diplomacy has also been signaled by the attendance of the US Secretary of State at Arctic Council meetings, as well as by applications for permanent observer status from the European Union and China, the world's largest and third largest economies. During the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union squared off across the Arctic Ocean. Nuclear submarines crawled under the ice, while long-range bombers patrolled high overhead. A more peaceful and cooperative approach emerged in 1990 when the two superpowers negotiated a maritime boundary in the Bering Sea, Bering Strait, and Chukchi Sea in 1996. The 8 Arctic countries' creation of the Arctic Council as an intergovernmental forum for discussing issues other than those of military security. Some of that cooperation is manifested through a growth of international law, more and more of which is specific to the Arctic, and these rules are helping countries to avoid and resolve what might otherwise be difficult disputes. This sounds good, but there has been an increase of military trainings in the Arctic zone lately, already exceeding the level of the Cold War, active involvement of Iceland, Finland and Sweden in military games. Further to this, Russian efforts in strengthening its northern fleet, which includes the nuclear component. Overlapping claims and heavy militarization of the Arctic create an environment for hybrid threats, with possible matching scenarios like that of South China Sea, but more complex due to the combination of factors that challenge the applicable laws. Russian violations of the territorial integrity of Ukraine, Georgia, and the Republic of Moldova have raised concerns over territorial conflicts between Russia and the rest of the Arctic states. We know Russian territorial ambitions can turn violent. Although most of the cooperation in the Arctic is based on clearly defined rights over land. adjoining waters, and the resources of the continental shelf, and the region transformation into a zone of interstate cooperation increasingly includes cooperation on security issues. Yet, for the past couple of decades, the Arctic had been viewed as an area of high north and low tension. The watershed speech by the last president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, in 1987, had called for peace-building measures to lessen strategic tensions in the Arctic. And in 1996, the then newly created Arctic Council decided to leave security affairs off its agenda in the organization's founding document. Within the Arctic Council, its 8 members, which include Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Russia, and the United States, sought to promote the Arctic as a zone of cooperation and joint problem solving. As a good example, Norway and Russia have ratified an agreement on the Barents Sea, ending a 40-year demarcation dispute. Still, the situation has shifted abruptly, however, due to two major factors. The first is the more visible overspill of conflicting great power policies, especially between Russia and the United States, into the Arctic, as both countries recognize the region is more central to their strategic interests. The second is the growing attention paid by non-Arctic states to Arctic affairs, especially as the far north welcomes greater economic activity. Several European actors, including the European Union, Japan, Singapore, China, and South Korea, have also sought to develop more robust Arctic policy interests, and as a result, the Arctic has increasingly been moving away from the international strategic margin, raising the question of the degree to which the Arctic should be considered an international security concern as opposed to a regional one. In the early May of 2020, a group of American and British warships sailed into the Barents Sea for the first time since the Cold War. Russian authorities perceived this as a conscious threat, and Russia responded by announcing and conducting its own exercises in the Norwegian Sea and the Barents Sea. The Cold Response 2020 military exercise brought 16,000 troops from 10 countries, including Americans, British, Dutch, German, French, Danish, as well as Swedish and Finnish troops to northern Norway. The goal was to conduct a multinational joint exercise with a high-intensity combat scenario in demanding winter conditions. By year 2022, a full-fledged cavalry battalion with about 400 soldiers will be based in Porsanger in the northern Norway region. Included in the military build-up is also a new 200-soldier-strong ranger company at the garrison of Sør-Varanger, based on the border to Russia. And US President Donald Trump has ordered a cross-government push to deliver a new fleet of icebreaker ships by 2029, aimed at bolstering US presence in the polar regions and maintaining a critical foothold in the high north. Russia has on repeated occasions expressed dislike with the biannual NATO exercise and has explicitly displayed its presence in the region ahead of the drills. In February 2020, 2 planes from the Russian Northern Fleet flew far south along the Norwegian coast, and the Russian Northern Fleet conducted combat training at the Shari shooting range just a few kilometers from the border to Norway. The United States National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020 details a process to report on Chinese and Russian military activities in the Arctic and evaluate the extent to which these activities affect or threaten the interests of the United States and its allies. US defense personnel are also instructed to closely monitor Chinese foreign direct investment in the region. Further to this, Lithuanian officials have been resisting China's attempts to secure a controlling stake in a port on the Baltic Sea. The communist regime called itself a near-Arctic state in a white paper last year, even though the distance between China and the Arctic Circle is 3,000 kilometers or 1,900 miles, declaring its intention to participate in the governance of the Arctic. The strategy document noted, in line with its Polar Silk Road policy, that the governance of the Arctic requires the participation and contribution of all stakeholders in the world. The Barents Sea signifies the area in all probability to become a breaking point between the United States and Russia due to the existence of significant fisheries, oil resources, and the uneasy security state of affairs between Norway and Russia. The Barents Sea is heating particularly rapidly, and its nearness to the chief docks of the Russian Northern Fleet makes it a central area of potential conflict.